Hi, I'm Andy Brandt. Welcome to another episode of Agile Answers. And this time we have a guest, Dominik Maximini, one of the leading German experts on Scrum and Agile. He is also the author of recently published book, The Scrum Culture. That book was initially published in German, but now we have an English edition, so you can probably buy it on Amazon or somewhere else and read it. And it's even better than the German edition because there is some content added. Do you want to add anything to that introduction about yourself?
Probably not, just that I'm thrilled to be here and I hope I can answer some of your questions.
Okay, so first question, that was asked by one of our Scrum Masters we work with, working in a large company, and it went like this. Okay, so what we do with architects? There are no architects in Scrum. If you look into the Scrum guide, there are no architect role. So where do we put them? Are they outside of the teams, or where are they?
That's an excellent question, actually, because all architects will wonder where their place is now with this new Scrum thingy. Yeah? First thing is, while the role of an architect might be discussed, the task of doing architecture cannot be. So with Scrum, the development team is fully responsible for what they deliver, and this does definitely include architecture. That means the Scrum team, the development team, they do have to have architecture know-how. Now the bad part for the recent architect is that the development team does not have roles. That means people do not have a role like, I'm the tester and I feel lower than the programmer, and the programmer feels lower than the architect, and the architect feels lower than the senior architect. No, they're all equals. Yeah? Of course, there is somehow an internal hierarchy in terms of knowledge and skill and everything, but it's not because of the titles. Yeah? So the title of architect is stripped away, the knowledge of architecture is still there. And even better, in a traditional enterprise, you usually have a handful of architects for a whole lot of people. With Scrum, the recommendation is to have somebody with architecture skills on every single team. And that means you actually need more architects in terms of architecture know-how than before.
So when you said that the role itself is disputable, but what is for sure that the architectural skills or experience must be in the development teams.
Yes, definitely.
And that's maybe to make architects feel a bit better, but that is the same about all the other skills and titles.
Yeah.
So we need QA skills, but we don't necessarily need a QA person. So we kind of strip away that equal sign between a person and a skill.
Yeah.
Right? So one person can carry different skills on different levels. But being an architect, a question that again pops up is, okay, so what I do? Maybe I can't code anymore, for example. That's my pet peeve, non-coding architects. What do I do on the development team?
The question is good. The answer might not be as good. Yeah? You are a valuable contributor to the development team as long as you contribute value. Yeah? That's a no-brainer. Still, if you go to the team and the team finds it valuable to have you as a non-coding architect, that's fine. And to be honest, you do need the non-coding part as well. The question is if that can keep you busy throughout the lifetime of a project. So maybe you will learn new skills. Yeah? Maybe you will do skills that are not your non-coding architecture part. Maybe documentation or testing or whatever, I don't know. Yeah? But if you are not able or willing to do any of those, maybe Scrum is not the place where you will feel good.
Okay, so that's a very honest answer, really. So let's move to the other question that we have discussed that we'll be asking you during this interview. So as a consultant, because you are a consultant, you go to different companies and work on different levels. You also work with managers, and that's something I have been also doing. I've been thinking a lot about recently. Is how to talk to managers, how to present Agile in general. I wouldn't focus on Scrum in particular because Scrum is just one of many Agile framework or approaches. But there are two particular questions that come up, which is, okay, so as a line manager, as a manager, what do I do? what's there for me, and also how will I know that this thing is doing us good, that it's really bringing us value, that we adopted it, how I'm going to know that it's improving our organization.
The topic of management is very difficult because there are many zealots out there, radical people who don't have a deep understanding of what management actually does for them or did for them in the past. Now they're stating, well, we are agile, we don't need management anymore, get rid of your jobs or anything. I don't like that at all. One thing to state that very clearly is, no matter if you do traditional approaches or agile or whatever, you do need the task of management. And you do need the task of leadership. You need both. No matter if you're agile or not. The question is, how are you going to carry it out? And the question is, who is going to carry it out? And if your question is, where is my place as a traditional manager? We might have to consider what you have been doing so far. If your role description included already to coach your people, to develop your people's skills and stuff like that, to remove impediments, so problems in the organization, to maximize value, stuff like that, optimize the processes, well, then you have good chances that your role will not change by much. You might learn additional skills in how to do the leadership and how to do the management, but the role as such will stay the same. If your role included sitting in meetings, not doing anything worthwhile, then you will not like your job anyway. So you might think about changing it, even though it's difficult. Now, this whole fuss about what's leadership, what's management, of course you can distinguish it, but never forget you need both.
Yeah, so so this is something that you would tell to a manager who would come to you as a consultant doing Scrum training or Agile introduction in the company, and that's what you will tell them. So you have, there are parts of your job that you did so far that you can carry on doing, but there are other parts that you will change. It's a good summary of what you said.
Basically, yes. However, be careful not to overgeneralize stuff. Because, of course, there's the general information we can give to you, but on the other hand, you have to make sure to pick the person up where the person is. And everybody has different experience, different skills, different needs and problems maybe. So it's very individual how it could look like. And for example, if you look at the Peter Principle, it basically states people get promoted as long as they're good at what they're doing, and they stop being promoted when they're no longer good at what they're doing. Well, if being promoted is the only form of recognition you can get in an enterprise, everybody will strive for being promoted. That does not mean that people who have been promoted actually like the new job. So sometimes people are actually happy if you show them that there is another world, other stuff they could do.
Okay, maybe they missed that. So I like what you said, because I always say that this conflict between management and leadership, I see it as a false dichotomy. You have to have both. I mean, you cannot be a good leader without being a good manager, and vice versa. So you have to have both qualities, and maybe in some cases they can be in different persons, but usually to be a good manager you have to have some leadership qualities as well. But there's the other part of the question is, okay, so how do I know whether this is improving our organization? And I'm asking this because that's quite normal for managers to rely on all forms of metrics and reports, and those are either stripped away from them or they are no longer meaningful, and their reaction is either just feeling they miss information and, they sit there sad in their office, or they start to invent new metrics and reports that are agile and can be plugged into teams, like velocity, for example, becoming a KPI. It's very typical. It's quite
but
frequent.
A bad idea, right?
It's a bad idea, but it's very, very frequent.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend to a manager asking, how do I know?
That's actually very simple. Yeah? It might appear difficult or complicated when you start thinking about it, but once you've done it, it's actually simple. All of Agile revolves around creating value. Now, what is value for the average enterprise?
Revenue, obviously.
Yeah, revenue. So it's about money. So what you do as a manager is you look at the area of your responsibility. If it changes or not, doesn't matter. But then you work with all other parts, your peers and your superiors and even your teams. Yeah? And you look at, now if revenues is what you're striving for, how do you contribute to those revenues? And when we're talking about Scrum, we are talking about product development. That means you're developing a product. And this product obviously should create some revenues. Yeah? So now you can think of what is the primary metric that creates revenues. It might be the number of sales. It might be the number of active users. It might be the usage times. Think Angry Birds. Yeah? How often do people hit the advertisements? Yeah? That creates value. So think about those things. Yeah? Know your product and then come up with it. So for example, with one customer, we did a product. It was about a certain type of service. Yeah? And we had some estimates about how many times those service would be booked. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So the only thing we did in the very beginning was we said, okay, what customer groups will use this service and what will be the primary features they need to use that? And we came up with 6 features, while in the beginning we had a list of like 150. Yeah? So from that point on, for every, we used user stories, but for every user story we used, we calculated on average how many of those users would be added to our base. And that can be measured afterwards. Mm-hmm. So as a manager...
This is more about product ownership than line management of teams, right?
True.
So how about the metrics or ways of knowing that the teams are improving and their performance is improving?
Mm-hmm. It's along the same lines. If the speed at which value is added is accelerating, that means your team must be doing something right. And in addition, if you look at what makes an enterprise go round, work well, you most often do not only have revenue targets, you also have like happiness targets. Yeah? For example, look at your turnover. How long does it take and how much does it cost? Yeah? How long does it take and how much does it cost to get a new employee for a certain position?
Okay, that's an interesting metric, which is some onboarding cost, onboarding effort that we have.
And you multiply it with the number of people you have to onboard in a certain range. Yeah? And if you have a happy team, usually this cost will be lower. And if you have an unhappy team, the cost will be higher. Yeah?
Okay.
So
there are other ways of observing than going after team velocity, function points, and all the metrics that usually come out of tools that are sometimes implemented, right?
The major problem is if you are along the lines of systems thinking, complexity thinking, that all of those metrics are at the end of the day completely irrelevant. You are able to measure them, but they don't actually have that a huge impact on the final outcome of the enterprise. So the enterprise is a big system. Hundreds of people are working together. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that much if this specific developer creates 100 lines of code or 1,000. Not even the team output at the end of the days will change the life of the company, unless the company is very small. But only the combination of what you developed, what you produce, what you service, what you deliver via sales, marketing, and everything working together. So the question is, why measure it? And unfortunately, very often the answer is because we can measure this, but we cannot measure the bigger part.
So we measure what we can, not what we should.
Exactly.
Okay. So thank you for that. I hope you can benefit from those insights. You can also email Dominik and he will reply, probably not very fast, but he will. And you can also read the book. There will be a link to the book below this video. So anything you would like to add?
Just use your common sense, use inspect and adapt, use transparency, and if you do all that, you probably aren't that far off.
Yeah, so it's not about sticking to a book or a guide or
No.
even the Scrum guide. It's about being empirical and deriving value. Really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, this book, when I finished writing it, it took a year to get published, and it probably took another year for you to read it. So probably by the time you read it, it's outdated. Yeah. So look at your situation, try your own experiments, work for it, go for it, learn from it, and then you're successful.
Okay. So thank you for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. Hope to see you again on Agile Answers someday.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.